So I'm aware that this week is the bank holiday which commemorates 75 years of VE Day, and so I thought it'd be quite nice if there was a recipe that I could do for you that would commemorate that you could maybe have a go at home as well. So in looking through recipes, I've come across a recipe on, I believe it's the National Trust, and they have got a recipe there for a cake which is similar to what Winston Churchill's cook would have made, as apparently he was quite partial to some fruit cake. Now this cake is a mixture between a tea loaf and a fruit cake, and when I found the recipe it wanted a whole pack of butter in it, which I thought was quite a lot. So I looked how many they thought it was going to serve and they said 12. So I've reduced the recipe down, so instead of 5 eggs we're going to use 3 eggs, and instead of a pack of butter we're going to use a lot less butter. Now because this is a bit of a tea loaf, we need to soak our dried fruit in tea the night before. Now you need, and apologies, most of the recipes I do for you are ones that I've made lots of times before and I use at home quite a lot. This one I'm making it for the first time, so apologies if I have to look at the recipe for quantities or ingredients or method. So dried fruit, it suggests you need 100, and this is scaled down to 3 egg mix, you need 175 grams of dried fruit. I won't be sultanas. If you've got mixed dried fruit that's fine. Now they want glace cherries. If you use glace cherries, don't worry about soaking them in the tea the day before. However, I had absolutely no glace cherries and my husband really hates cherries. So instead I've used dried cranberries. So because dried cranberries are a bit like sultanas in that they are very dry, I've soaked them in the night before. So with your glace cherries you want 65 grams. If you don't want to use glace cherries, you absolutely could use something like dried cranberries, dried blueberries, again 65 grams, or you could swap those for nuts, would work well, or dried apricots would also work well. However, whichever fruit you're using that needs to go to be soaked overnight, so I've got 175 grams of dried fruit and 65 grams of cherries. I put it into a bowl overnight, and I put 2 tea bags and made a cup of tea using 2 tea bags and left it to stew for quite a while, for about 20 minutes. I then took the tea bags out and then put the rest of the tea on top of the fruit until it just covered the top of the fruit in the little bowl. I left it like that overnight, and the great thing that does is it makes your fruit get nice and plump and absorb moisture, so it'll be a much juicier fruit in the mix. Today then, just before I've made this recipe, I've just sieved the fruit off. I'm keeping hold of the tea that's left at the bottom because there's a need for some treacle in this recipe if you want to. I don't have any treacle at home, I never really use it, so I, instead of using treacle, should be using a little bit of the discarded tea for flavour. So my fruit is ready, and that's been done the day before. The next thing is to preheat your oven once you're on the day that you're ready to cook this. It wants a really low temperature, just like with a fruit cake. So I've preheated the oven to 150 degrees, that's gas mark 2 or 3. Okay, really, really low, and you're going to cook this for a long time. The next thing to say is to get yourself a tin and to grease it. Now, because I've taken the recipe and made it much smaller, I'm going for a 7-inch tin, which I believe is about 18 centimetres, but that 7-inch tin. You need to line it with some greaseproof paper. Hopefully you know how to line a tin. I use these cake liners and nothing ever sticks to cake liners, so I'm just going to put one of my cake liners in. I've gone for quite a deep tin because I'm not sure quite how much mix this is going to make. I have a feeling it'll be quite a lot, so I've got a deep tin here. That's ready to one side. First thing then that you're going to do with this recipe is you need 135 grams of butter and 100 grams of dark brown sugar. Now I managed to get some dark brown sugar a few weeks ago when I was last out shopping. However, if you don't have dark brown sugar, I was thinking about this, and something I did pick up before I've managed to find the sugar and couldn't go back in the shop to put this back away, was I wondered whether caster sugar with a little bit of agave nectar would work. Agave nectar adds a bit of a nice dark brown colour to your cooking, and so I thought maybe if I couldn't get brown sugar, what I would do is put the caster sugar in, maybe with a tablespoon of agave in. Don't know, it might be something you've got at home, and if so, it might be something you could try. So you need to cream this together. Because my butter, it's quite a cold day today, has been out for a few hours and it still wasn't very soft. I've started doing this, but you're looking to just get the butter and the sugar to combine and hopefully go a little bit lighter in colour. This is going to be noisy for about a minute, and so I'm just going to pause the video while I just cream this together using an electric hand whisk. So I've whisked the butter and the sugar together. If you didn't want to use butter, you could try using some hard margarine. It's gone a little bit lighter in colour, but the creaming method, which is what this is, will just trap a little bit of air into this mixture. The next stage then is to add 3 eggs, and you're going to mix with the electric whisk after every time you add an egg. Every time you add an egg, you want to add a tablespoon of your flour. Now you need 170 grams of self-raising flour. So I shall put the first spoon in, because once I crack each egg I'm going to need to go wash my hands because I've handled raw egg. There's the first egg in with a tablespoon of flour. The flour going in just prevents the mixture from curdling and turning into a mixture that looks like scrambled eggs, very runny and split. So that's incorporated now nicely. The eggs haven't curdled in the mixture, the first egg hasn't curdled. And I'm always trying to get the mixture down from the sides of the bowl. So in goes a tablespoon more of my flour with another egg, and again I'm going to need to wash my hands. And just give that a whisk round. The second egg's incorporated again, it's not split or curdled the mixture, which is good, and third egg's going to go in. I'm just going to go wash my hands properly now, because that's the last of the eggs. And I need to remember that I've got to add 1 tablespoon of flour in with that so that the mixture doesn't curdle. And I'm going to try to, before the mixer goes on, just get some of the bits of butter and sugar down from the side so that they can be incorporated with this. So that is now the third egg added. It's got a nice lighter colour now, as you can see. There'll be some air trapped in there. Whisking the eggs will do that. Also, as I said, the creaming of butter and sugar will do that. And it hasn't split because I've added the flour. Now the next thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to fold in the remaining of your flour. So you needed 170 grams of self-raising flour in total. Obviously you've put some in already. So this is the remainder of the self-raising flour. And then you're also going to need to add 3/4 of a teaspoon of mixed spice. The reason for the random amount is because I've divided everything so it's just a bit bigger than half the cake that it asked initially for. So 3/4 of a teaspoon of mixed spice. And then with a metal spoon you need to fold the flour and the mixed spice in. That's to try and prevent us losing any air out of what we've tried to incorporate in. Now the mixed spice I love, and it smells amazing at this stage, so hopefully you might like this if you like mixed spice as well. So I'm just gently folding that in, trying to do the figure of 8 movement as I go to make sure that the flour's incorporated. The next stage then is to add in your fruit. So this is, if you were using cherries, this would be the time that you add in your 65 grams of cherries, but cut them maybe in half or into quarters depending on how much you like finding cherries. Or if you, like me, have soaked your what would be cherries because they were cranberries or apricots and you wanted to add some liquid into those, then this would be the time to add those in. So I've got 65 grams of glacé cherries, or it could be dried apricots, dried cranberries, nuts or dried apricots, and then I've got 175 grams of dried fruit. So I use sultanas, but you could use raisins, whatever you want, and they go in. And I'm going to lose this because it's very wet. Now at this stage we're going to then fold this in with our metal spoon, but if you're going to use treacle you can add a tablespoon of treacle here. Like I said, don't have any treacle in, and I'm not going to go to the shops especially for any ingredients at the moment. So I'm going to take a teaspoon of this tea and add this in. Now this tea has got a beautiful red colour because of the cranberries that were in it. It just looks amazing actually, but that will have the flavour of the tea, but it also will have a bit of the flavour of the fruit in there. So that's just going to be stirred in. Now at this stage, hopefully it will come together. Trying to be quite careful still with this mixture, and hoping that eventually I will get the fruit combined throughout. It won't sit on top, but it will be combined, which it's doing now. So let me just check I've got all the ingredients in and not forgotten anything. I think I have got everything in. So then this is going to go into your tin. Now this is where going a bit maverick and trying to do the recipe and switching it a bit with quantities and what have you. They never told me what size tin anyway. I think about a 7-inch tin sounds good to me. If it doesn't work so well in the 7-inch tin, I will make sure that in the drop down information with the ingredients I'll put the correct size tin, but I think 7-inch looks okay looking at this amount of mixture. And the other thing I'm not going to be able to tell you is the exact time of cooking. They say 2 hours, but that was for a cake that served 12. I reckon this cake will probably serve 8, because I thought if it's lockdown, how many people are going to be eating this cake? So I've reduced the numbers. But again, once I find out, I'll let you know at the end of this video how long mine took to cook, and then hopefully there you can work out how long it will take for yours to cook. So mix is now going to go into my prepared cake tin. Trying to make sure that the baking paper on those cake liners are staying upright, because I don't want the cake to go outside of there. And then to get the rest of this out, I'm going to actually use a spatula. I'm not worrying too much about flattening it in the middle just yet. I'll do that once I've got all the mix in. There we are. That's what I go for. Mark this. There we go. And then I'm going to try to just spread this mixture all around the inside of the cake so it's at one level. At the moment I put the cake literally in the middle of the cake line and the cake tin, and I just want to spread it right out to the edges like this. And then this is going to go into the oven. Like I say, it says for about 2 hours, and obviously different cookers will take different amounts of time anyway. However, I'll give you an idea of how long mine did actually take to cook. Okay, so cake is in. It's a bit like a Christmas cake this, but hopefully a little bit lighter. Cake's gone in. Even though it's a deep tin, it's probably come up to about there. From the base is where my thumb is of the tin. It's come up to about where my finger is. So you don't want to be making this in a Victoria sandwich tin, which are quite thin. It's going to go into the oven. I'll put it in for an hour and a half and have a little look at it, and then like I say, when it does come out I'll let you know how long this has taken to cook. But so far so good. It smells amazing, it looks lovely, and I'll let you see what it looks like when it comes out of the oven. Thank you. So the Winston Churchill inspired fruitcake has now come out of the oven. It's been in there for about an hour and 3/4. Because I was in the middle of eating dinner when the alarm went off at 1.5 hours, I came, had a quick look at it, and I noticed that it was just the right amount of golden colour on the top. So at that point, I didn't want the top to brown anymore, and I didn't want to start testing it. So I just took a couple of pieces of greaseproof paper, cut it into the shape of the tin, just pop that on top, and that would stop the top from browning. So if you notice that your cake is browning too quickly and it isn't finished cooking, you can always do that. Now I've taken it out a quarter of an hour after that. Like I said, I was in the middle of dinner, so I wanted to finish my dinner off. I've taken a skewer. You might have a cake testing skewer, and that's fine. I've put it into the middle of the cake, and when I've taken it out there shouldn't be any mix on there, so it's nice and clear. This came out about 5 minutes ago, so the tin is now just about cool enough for me to be able to do the following step. You need to take this cake out and you need to let it cool down on a wire rack. So I'm going to put the wire rack on top. Obviously if your cake tin is still hot, then you need to use oven gloves to do this little bit. And you tip your tin upside down and remove your cake tin. Because I've used greaseproof, like a mould to go inside the cake tin, I can just peel this off, and it does peel off remarkably easy. Oh, this smells amazing. Honestly, if this is something that Winston Churchill liked to have and to enjoy eating, he's got good taste, because it smells phenomenal, and I'm not a great fan of fruit cake. I'm going to carefully turn it back up the other way. Now it feels very, very delicate, this cake, because you've soaked the fruit and because it's quite a nice light cake, it will be quite delicate. The best thing I'm going to do now is to leave it to cool down. It will just then hopefully firm up a little bit. I know it's cooked on all the way through because I tested it with a skewer. So I've made a mix that is 3/5 of the size of the original recipe on the National Trust page. If you want to go and look at it, you're welcome. I've put it in a 7-inch tin. It's quite deep. If you wanted it, if you only had an 8-inch tin, that would work as well. It might take a little bit less time to cook, and it would be a little bit less deep. Because it's less deep, it would take less time to cook. I will, however, put on here in the underneath part of the YouTube link, I'll put on there the recipe I used, which is 3/5 of the original recipe. It took a 7-inch tin. It took an hour and a half to an hour and 3/4 to cook, and that was on gas mark 2 or 3. It was 150-degree fan was the actual oven it was cooked in there, if that helps you. I hope that you're able to join in some celebrations for VE Day, albeit remotely, and perhaps differently to how we might have celebrated before. However, this is something hopefully you'll enjoy eating on VE Day anniversary. Thank you ever so much.